So if you are just opening Blender for the first time and you just want to try to do things without any help to see how far you can go, you might have realized you need help immediately, because it is almost impossible to move things in Blender. So but the big truth is that you don't actually need to learn everything. Like, I have been working on Blender for the past 4 years and I actually don't know some parts in Blender, like scripting. I don't actually need scripting for the job that I am doing. Okay, so in this tutorial we are going to be learning the basics about Blender, how to use Blender as a beginner. So I believe that doing is also the best way to learn. So along the way we'll be building our very own dining set. So along the way we'll be building our very own dining set. So stay tuned with the tutorial. Make sure you complete the tutorial. So let's get started. So this big window here, it is called the 3D viewport, and this is actually where you will be spending about 90% of your time, because this is where the work of Blender is done. So you will be spending about 90% of your time here. So the 3D viewport, okay, it has some default objects like the cube, the light, and the camera. Okay, so whenever you open Blender, these 3 default objects will automatically be in the 3D viewport. So the cube, the light, and the camera. So this thing over here, which is like a triangle, this is actually a camera. This is a light. Okay, now let's go into how to move objects in Blender. Okay, so now if you try to move this cube in Blender by right clicking, you just realize that nothing is actually happening. Okay, so what you can actually do is to select the cube. So in some Blender setting, you select with your left key. Yeah, so it actually depends on your Blender setting. So some Blender setting use the left click button to select an object, while some use the right click button, but it actually depends on the way you set. So as for my PC, I set it to be right click. So to move an object, you right click, then you come to this move, as you can see over here. There are actually 2 ways to do it, so this is the first way. So you come to move, right? So now you get these 3 arrows pointing at different axes. So this blue arrow here is actually the Z axis, like as you can see over here, which is the Z axis, and this red arrow is actually the X axis, as you can see over here, and the green arrow is actually the Y axis. So to move in the Z axis, which is upward, what you just have to do, you click on it and drag. Okay, now to move in the X axis, which is the red line, you just click on the red arrow. Let me turn on my screencast. Okay, so I actually turn on my screencast so you can see the keys I am working on here. Okay, so to move on the Y axis, which is this green line over here, you just have to click on the green arrow and drag. So you left click and drag, not right click. You left click and drag. Okay, so actually this is one way you can move objects in Blender, but I don't actually use this way because this way is a bit of time consuming. So the other way you can do that is to use the hotkey. So the hotkey to move objects in Blender is actually G. G for grab. So you can see G. So what happened here is that when I click on the G, the box automatically stick to my cursor, so I don't need to left click. Once I move my mouse without clicking on the cursor, you can see, so the box follows my cursor. Okay, so now to move along the axis, as I said, the blue axis is the Z axis, the green is the Y axis, and the red is the X axis. So to move along the Z axis with the shortcut, what you just have to do, you click on G and Z to move along the Z axis. Then you use your mouse, just move it to the place you want. Then you can also go on G, X to move along the X axis. Okay, then G, Y to move along the Y axis. Okay, so the next now is how can I rotate the cube in Blender? It's very simple. So all you just have to do, so this is move, you just come to rotate, right? While your cube is selected, I told you. So to move an object, you need to specify the object, so make sure it's selected. So rotate, you click on this, rotate, right? Now the green is to rotate in the Y axis. If I should click on the green and drag, you can see it's rotating along the Z axis, and the red line is to rotate along the X axis, so you can see it, and the okay, select your cube, and the blue line is actually to rotate around the Z axis. Okay, so now the hotkey for this is actually R. R for rotate. So you click on your cube and you go on R. R to rotate. Okay, so you don't have to left click to hold down your mouse before you can rotate. So you just have to do is to click on R, then you just move your mouse to where you want it to rotate to. Then to rotate along the axis, you just go on R and the axis you want to rotate to, for example Z. So RZ will rotate along the Z axis. Okay, RX to rotate along the X axis, and RY to rotate along the Y axis. Okay, now the next question is, how can I enlarge the cube? How can I scale? So what you just have to do, make sure the cube is selected, then you come to scale on the 3D viewport. So scale, you come to scale. Now to scale along the Z axis is almost the same thing with movement and rotation. Just click on the blue and drag. Okay, to scale along the X, also click on the blue and drag. To scale along the Y, which is the green, click on the green and drag. Okay, so now the hotkey for this is actually S, which is to scale. So S is for scale, so the hotkey is S. So once you click on S, you can actually scale your cube. Then X plus the axis you want to scale to, for example XZ, we scale only in the Z axis, and SX, you select your cube. Make sure your cube is selected before you perform any function. SX to scale on the X axis, and SY to scale on the Y axis. Okay, so that is that for movement, rotation, and scale. Okay, so now if you are done with all this movement, rotation, scale, how can you actually view your cube from behind, view the bottom? Okay, the question is, how do I actually move my view? Like, how do I actually go around the scene to explore my cube? Okay, so there is a straight answer to that. You can do this by holding down your center button of your mouse, which is the scroll wheel, like this in the picture here. So all you just have to do is to hold down the scroll wheel and you drag. Okay, so now this is called orbiting. So you hold down your scroll wheel and you drag. And my laptop people with touchpad, you are panicking right now because you just realize you don't have a middle mouse button. So but you can do it. You can also do it with your touchpad. You don't actually need a mouse, so all you just have to do is to come to this area right here. So as you can see, the this green circle right here is for the y-axis, the red circle is for the x-axis, and the blue circle is for the z-axis. So you can just hold down any of them and rotate your view. So you can use this function also without the use of a mouse. So this is actually how you can orbit around to explore your objects in Blender. So now the second way to move is called pan. It's called pan, and this is done with the use of shift and your scroll wheel. So you hold down shift, then you hold down your scroll wheel at the same time, then you move your mouse. Okay, so you can move from one angle to another. So what I am actually trying to say, as you can see, a shift mouse way down. So you hold down shift on your keyboard. So in case you don't know the shift key on your keyboard, this is actually the shift key on your keyboard, this right here. So just hold down the shift key and your middle mouse button, then you drag. So you are actually doing a movement called pan in Blender. Okay, and now again for my laptop people, you don't have to panic. You don't have a mouse, you can also do it by coming to this hand icon here. All you just have to do is to left click on it, then drag. See, so it still perform the same function. Okay, so that is how you can pan in Blender. So now there's another way you can actually access different view angle, which is with the use of your number pad. If you don't know what is number pad, this is, oh, my keyboard don't actually have a number pad here. So it's actually with the use of your number pad, which have the different views. For example, number pad 0 we take it to the camera view, number pad 7 we take it to the top view, 8 1 we take it to the front view, 3, that is, you can actually see the key I am using down here. So number pad 3 we take you to the side view, 2 to the right view. So my laptop people, once again, you don't need to panic. If your laptop doesn't have a number pad, all you just have to do is very easy. You come to this view, right, this view over here, then you come to viewpoint. As you can see, this is the top view, the bottom view, the front view, back view. You can actually click on the top view and click on front view, and so on. So another way you can do it is by using the tilt button on your keyboard, which is that key you have never used before. So the tilt button is actually this key under the escape key, which you have never used before. Okay, so by clicking on the tilt button, you get this pop-up which have the top view, the back view, the right view, view selected, bottom, camera view. So it's actually the same. Okay, so now we are done with the view. So now that we know how to scale, rotate and move objects in Blender, the next question is, how can we add in a new object in Blender? Something like this. How can we add in something like this, or a cycle? So to add in a new object in Blender, all you just have to do is to come to the add button over here. So now you can add in a mesh where we have the plane, the cube. The cube is the one we have as default. We also have cycle. For example, you can add in a cycle, just G, Z, you can see the cycle. And we can also add in a cylinder, GZ, you can see the cylinder. Okay, so now what is the hotkey to add in object in Blender? So if you don't want to be coming to this place, you can just type on Shift A on your keyboard and it will bring out the same menu. So you can add in a mesh, all this monkey head. So this is what they call the monkey head, GY. So this is actually the monkey head. So you can see it over here. Okay, so you can add in with Shift A, you can add in a text, you can add in a new light, you can add in a camera. Okay, now this bar over here is actually called the properties bar. So we are not actually going to be going through these ones. You will get used to them while we are working on a project. Why this is actually called the outliner. So this bar here contains all the objects that we have in the 3D viewport. Like as you can see, when I click on the camera right here, this camera come up. When I click on the cube come up and the light come up. So as we add in more objects, they are going to be displaying right here. So that is called the outliner. Okay, now let's proceed. I'm going to scale this a little bit. Okay, so now how can you make a copy, like the same copy of this cube? For example, now in this 3D viewport, like how can you duplicate this cube? It's like a simple process. So what you can actually do, you just hold down your Shift plus D. Shift D actually means to duplicate, as you can see, right? So Shift D to duplicate, you select your cube first, then Shift D to duplicate, then you can move it to the axis you want it to go, like the y-axis, the x-axis and the z. For example, now this green line is the y-axis, so you just go on Shift D. Okay, let me redo that. So you just go on Shift D to duplicate, then you hit y is still on, so you can move it actually to somewhere like this. So that is how you can duplicate in Blender. Now, what if you don't actually want a mesh in Blender? So how can you delete it? So you can delete it by using the X button. So you just select the cube you want to delete, you go on X to delete, or you can also do this alternatively. You can also use your delete button, go on delete. Okay, so you can go on X to delete, or you use your delete button. So we are going to be opening a new scene in Blender where we are going to be modeling our very first dining set. Okay, so we opened we open a new scene in Blender where we are going to be modeling our very own tiny set, which is something like this. Okay, so we've come to the end of the first part of this tutorial, so kindly check on the next tutorial where we are going to be modeling this tiny set. So click on the link on the screen to continue with the part 2 of this tutorial where we are going to be modeling this tiny set. The link will also be provided in the description box below. Do well to check it.